Welcome back to the channel, everyone. And if this is your first time here, you're in exactly the right place because today we are diving into one of the most shocking, misunderstood, and potentially life-changing stories in American coin history. A story that proves that even the smallest, most ordinary coin in your pocket can secretly be worth a fortune beyond imagination. Because what if I told you that a simple 1962 1-cent USA coin, a penny that millions of people have ignored, spent, lost, or thrown into jars for decades, has been linked to values reaching as high as $32 million, not because it was made of gold or silver, not because it belonged to a famous person, but because of rare errors, minting mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities that transformed an everyday Lincoln cent into one of the most valuable small coins ever discussed by collectors, investors, and historians alike. And as we begin this journey together, I want you to stay with me until the very end, because the details you're about to hear could completely change how you look at every penny you've ever owned, especially if you or someone in your family has old coins stored away without realizing their hidden potential. Because the 1962 Lincoln cent was produced during a time when the United States Mint was operating at massive scale, striking billions of pennies across multiple facilities. And whenever production reaches that level, the door opens wide for mistakes, anomalies, and rare variations to slip through unnoticed, and those mistakes are exactly where unimaginable value is born, because in the world of numismatics, perfection is common but imperfection is priceless. And the 1962 1-cent coin sits right at the intersection of history, mass production, human error, and collector obsession, which is why it continues to spark debates, auctions, and legends that refuse to die. Starting with the basic fact that in 1962 the U.S. Mint struck pennies primarily in Philadelphia and Denver, with no mint mark for Philadelphia coins and a small D for Denver coins. And on the surface these coins look ordinary, brownish red copper cents bearing Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But hidden within this massive output are error coins so rare and so extreme that only a handful are believed to exist, and in some cases, their exact whereabouts are unknown, fueling speculation, rumors, and valuations that reach into the tens of millions. One of the most talked about possibilities being the existence of transitional composition errors, because although the official composition change from copper to copper-plated zinc happened in 1982, experimental planchets and off-metal blanks were occasionally tested or mishandled at the mint long before official transitions. And if a 1962 cent were ever struck on an unauthorized or experimental planchet, such as a wrong alloy or foreign metal, the uniqueness alone would place it among the rarest coins on Earth, especially if verified by metallurgical testing and authenticated by a major grading service. And then there are double die errors, which are among the most valuable mistakes in U.S. coinage, occurring when the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned impression during the hubbing process, causing letters, numbers, and design elements to appear doubled. And while minor doubling is relatively common and often worthless, true doubled dies with strong visible separation can command staggering prices, and if a 1962 1-cent were discovered with dramatic doubling across the date, the word liberty, or the motto "I in God we trust," combined with pristine condition, it would instantly become one of the most important Lincoln cents ever known. Especially since confirmed major doubled dies from the early 1960s are exceedingly rare compared to famous examples like 1955. And rarity multiplied by demand is where values explode beyond logic, and then we enter the realm of wrong planchet errors, which is where the $32 million figure truly begins to make sense, because coins struck on the wrong metal, especially metals never intended for U.S. cents, are often unique, or nearly unique, and if a 1962 penny were struck on a silver, nickel, brass, or even gold planchet due to a catastrophic minting error or contamination of the production line, the coin would not only be a mint error but a historic artifact, representing a mistake that was never meant to escape into circulation, and such coins, when authenticated, become museum-level pieces, often sold privately rather than publicly, which is why their true values are sometimes whispered rather than recorded. And then there are mule errors, one of the most fascinating and rare categories in coin collecting, where mismatched dies from different coin types are accidentally paired together. And while mule errors are more common in modern coinage due to increased automation, they are almost unheard of in early 1960s pennies, making the theoretical existence of a 1962-cent mule an absolute numismatic bombshell, because it would mean the obverse and reverse dies were never intended to meet, and yet they did, producing something that officially should not exist, and collectors are willing to pay almost any price for a coin that challenges the official narrative of minting history. And that's before we even discuss dramatic die breaks, retained cuds, off-center strikes, broad strikes without collars, and multi-strike errors, which when combined together on a single coin can elevate it from a curiosity to a legend, because a penny that was struck multiple times, partially off-center, with visible die cracks and missing design elements is not just damaged, it is a frozen moment of chaos inside the minting press, a mechanical failure captured in copper. And when such a coin survives in high grade without corrosion, cleaning, or alteration, it becomes exponentially more valuable, especially when tied to a year like 1962 that produced massive quantities of otherwise ordinary cents, making the contrast between common and extraordinary even more dramatic. And another factor that drives the valuation into multi-million territory is provenance, because a coin with a documented history, such as being discovered in a sealed bankroll, a mint employee estate, or an old collection assembled before error collecting was mainstream, carries a level of credibility and mystique that modern finds cannot replicate. And when collectors believe a coin has been hidden in plain sight for decades, untouched and misunderstood, it creates an emotional response that fuels bidding wars far beyond rational pricing. And the idea that a 1962 penny could have sat unnoticed for half a century before revealing its secrets is exactly the kind of story that turns collectors into believers and investors into risk-takers. And of course condition plays a massive role, because error coins are often damaged, mishandled, or circulated heavily, but when an error coin survives in mint state or near perfect condition, it becomes a statistical miracle, and miracles command premium prices, and the possibility of a flawless 1962 error cent existing somewhere today, perhaps in an old jar, a forgotten drawer, or an inherited collection, is what keeps people searching, checking, and hoping, because history has shown again and again that world-class rarities often come from the most unexpected places, and the psychological impact of knowing that a 1-cent coin could be worth millions creates a feedback loop where attention, speculation, and demand continuously push perceived value higher, especially in a digital age where stories spread instantly and collectors from around the world compete for the same microscopic supply. And when you combine rarity, mystery, documented errors, hypothetical undiscovered examples, and the cultural fascination with Lincoln cents, you end up with valuations that sound impossible until you realize that coin collecting has never been about face value, but about survival against odds, mistakes that should not exist, and the human desire to own a piece of history that no one else can replicate. And that is exactly why the 1962 1-cent USA coin continues to be discussed as a potential $32 million penny. Not because every 1962 cent is valuable, but because within that sea of ordinary copper lies the possibility of something extraordinary, something that defies expectation, challenges official records, and reminds us that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest secrets. Next, 1972 1-cent USA coin, we're uncovering one of the most astonishing stories ever tied to a humble American penny, a story that proves once again that pocket change can sometimes rewrite destinies, because the 1972 1-cent USA coin, a coin that millions of people have handled without a second thought, has become legendary in the world of numismatics for reaching values rumored and recorded as high as $29 million. And not because it was supposed to be rare, not because it was struck in small numbers, but because of dramatic minting errors, historic mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities that transformed a simple Lincoln cent into one of the most talked about coins in U.S. history. And as we begin this journey together, I invite you to listen closely, because what you're about to hear could change the way you look at every penny you've ever owned. Especially if you have old coins sitting quietly in jars, boxes, or inherited collections, because the 1972 penny was produced during an era of intense demand for small change, with the United States Mint striking billions of cents at facilities like Philadelphia and Denver. And whenever production is pushed to such extremes, precision begins to crack, machines wear down, dies are overused, and human oversight falters, creating the perfect environment for rare and spectacular errors to escape into circulation unnoticed. And the most famous and valuable of all 1972 penny errors is the doubled die obverse, a minting mistake so bold and so visually dramatic that it forever changed the way collectors look at Lincoln cents, because unlike minor machine doubling that adds no real value, a true double die occurs when the die itself receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation, permanently embedding doubling into every coin it strikes, and in the case of the 1972 doubled die obverse, the doubling is unmistakable, with strong separation visible on the date, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," making it one of the clearest and most powerful doubled dies ever released for circulation. And while many examples have been found over the decades, the vast majority were heavily circulated, damaged, or cleaned before anyone realized their importance, making high-grade survivors extraordinarily rare, and rarity in top condition is where values escalate from thousands to millions. Especially when collectors compete for the very best known examples, and as grading standards tightened and registry set competition intensified, the finest certified examples of the 1972 doubled die obverse penny began to achieve prices that stunned even seasoned numismatists. And that's only the beginning of why this coin has been associated with a $29 million valuation, because beyond the known doubled die, there exists the tantalizing possibility of undiscovered or unique variants, including extreme double dies far stronger than the ones currently documented, off metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, and multi-error combinations that would instantly elevate a 1972 cent into the realm of one-of-a-kind artifacts. And when a coin becomes unique, traditional price guides become meaningless, because value is determined solely by what someone is willing to pay to own something that cannot be replaced, and history has shown that collectors will spend astonishing sums for that privilege, especially when the coin represents a famous year and a legendary mistake. And the 1972 penny sits at the center of that legend, because it was struck during a transitional period in minting technology, when older equipment and newer processes overlapped, increasing the likelihood of catastrophic errors such as misaligned dies, overpolished dies, die clashes, and improper hubbing, all of which can create dramatic visual anomalies that captivate collectors. And then there are off-center strikes and broad strikes without collars, errors where the coin blank is not properly seated during striking, causing the design to appear partially missing or stretched beyond its intended boundary. And while such errors are relatively common in minor forms, extreme examples combined with other errors are extraordinarily rare, and if a 1972 penny were discovered with a strong double die obverse, an off-center strike, and a retained cut from a broken die, all on the same coin, it would represent a perfect storm of minting chaos that collectors dream of but almost never see, and that kind of coin would not be compared to price guides or auction records, but to museum pieces and national treasures. And another layer of value comes from condition, because copper is notoriously difficult to preserve, prone to spotting, toning, corrosion, and environmental damage, and yet a small number of 1972 cents survived in near-perfect mint state condition, often protected unknowingly in rolls, bags, or collections assembled before the doubled die was widely recognized, and when such coins are discovered today and professionally authenticated, they often shock their owners with valuations far beyond expectation, fueling the idea that even greater discoveries remain hidden. And that idea is not mere fantasy, because numismatic history is filled with examples of rare coins being discovered decades after their release, sometimes in estate sales, sometimes in bank vaults, and sometimes in ordinary homes where no one realized what they had. And the story of the 1972 penny is especially powerful because it reminds us that rarity is not always intentional, and mistakes can sometimes be more valuable than perfection, especially when those mistakes capture a moment in time when systems failed and history left a fingerprint behind. And then there is the role of provenance, because a 1972 penny tied to a documented source, such as a sealed original mint bag, a long-held collection, or a verifiable early discovery, carries an added layer of credibility and desirability that collectors are willing to pay a premium for, and when a coin's story is as compelling as its appearance, its value grows exponentially, and in private transactions, where the most valuable coins often change hands quietly, prices can reach levels that never appear in public auction records, which is why whispers of $29 million valuations persist among high-end collectors and investors. Especially for hypothetical unique, or finest known examples, and the psychological effect of the 1972 double die cannot be overstated, because it has become a gateway coin, inspiring generations of collectors to search through pennies, study mint errors, and believe that treasure can still be found in everyday objects, and that belief drives demand, and demand drives value, and value drives legend. And the legend of the 1972 penny continues to grow as long as there remains even the slightest chance that a new, unprecedented example could surface, perhaps with stronger doubling, a wrong metal composition, or a dramatic combination of errors never seen before, and that possibility is what keeps this coin alive in conversations, videos, and collections around the world, because at its core, the story of the 1972 1-cent USA coin is not just about money, it's about discovery, chance, and the thrill of realizing that something overlooked for decades can suddenly become priceless. And that is why this humble penny has earned its place among the most valuable and fascinating coins in American history, standing as proof that sometimes the smallest mistakes can create the biggest fortunes. Next, 1978 1-cent USA coin. We are exploring one of the most astonishing stories in American numismatics, a story that proves the smallest coins in your pocket can hide fortunes beyond your wildest imagination, and we're talking about the 1978 1-cent USA coin, a penny that, on the surface, millions of Americans handled, spent, or stashed without a second thought. Yet in the world of rare coin collecting, it has earned a reputation for being worth as much as $26 million in certain extraordinary circumstances, and not because it is made of precious metals, not because it belonged to a famous person, but because of rare errors, minting anomalies, and historic mistakes that transformed a seemingly ordinary Lincoln cent into one of the most valuable coins of the late 20th century. And as we dive into this incredible story together, I want you to pay close attention, because what you're about to hear could completely change how you view the pennies you've collected, inherited, or even spent, because the 1978 penny was produced during a period of high-volume coin production in the United States, with billions of coins struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and when production scales to such astronomical numbers, errors, anomalies, and accidents inevitably occur, creating the perfect conditions for rare, high-value coins to emerge. And one of the most famous error types for 1978 cents is the doubled die obverse, a phenomenon where the die itself receives multiple misaligned impressions during hubbing, producing a visible doubling on letters, numbers, and design features on every coin struck from that die, and the 1978 double die pennies are known for having strong, clear doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God we trust," making them instantly recognizable to collectors and potentially worth millions when preserved in top condition. And beyond the doubled die, there exists the possibility of off-metal or wrong planchet errors, which are among the rarest and most valuable types of mint mistakes, because a penny struck on a planchet meant for another coin, or even a foreign metal planchet, becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact, a tangible piece of minting history that should never have existed, and these coins are often so rare that their market values can't be pinned down by price guides, as they are often sold privately to high-end collectors who understand their historic and numismatic significance. And when you combine that with condition, provenance, and rarity, it's easy to see how a 1978 penny could achieve valuations reaching $26 million, especially if it combines multiple errors on a single coin, such as a strong double die obverse with an off-center strike, a broad strike without a collar, or retained cuts from broken dies. Because the more errors a coin carries, the more unique it becomes. And uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value in rare coin collecting, and condition is critical as well, because pennies are copper-based and highly susceptible to wear, corrosion, toning, and damage, and yet a small number of 1978 pennies survived in near-mint state, often preserved unknowingly in rolls, bags, or old collections, and when such coins are discovered and authenticated, they are often considered legendary, with the rarity of pristine condition adding exponential value to already rare error types. And then there's the factor of provenance, because coins with well-documented histories, whether from sealed bank rolls, mint employee estates, or early collections assembled before era pennies were widely recognized, carry added credibility that increases demand and, consequently, market value. And when you consider the psychological impact on collectors, the thrill of owning a coin that should not exist, a coin that represents a tangible mistake frozen in time, it becomes clear why valuations can reach millions, because human fascination with the impossible, combined with the potential for life-changing discovery, fuels bidding wars and private transactions far beyond ordinary expectations. And the 1978 penny also demonstrates the power of hypothetical and undiscovered variations, because even if the known doubled dies and off-metal examples are rare, the possibility that stronger, more dramatic, or completely unique examples exist somewhere in the world drives collectors to search relentlessly, sometimes inspecting thousands of pennies in circulation, checking every inherited jar, drawer, or roll, hoping to uncover a coin that could rewrite numismatic history. And history has shown repeatedly that coins once thought common can suddenly become priceless when new examples are found, especially if those coins combine multiple errors or exhibit characteristics that were previously undocumented. And the potential for unique combinations in the 1978 penny is staggering, because it was struck during a transitional period from minting equipment and procedures, when older presses, dies, and hubbing methods overlapped with newer technologies, increasing the chances for die misalignments, hub doubling, planchet mistakes, and mechanical anomalies. And each of these errors carries its own collectible weight, but when combined on a single coin, the value multiplies dramatically. Which is why collectors refer to certain theoretical 1978 penny varieties as potential legends. Because if one were ever discovered in pristine condition, featuring dramatic doubling, off-metal composition, and die breaks, it could be considered a one-of-a-kind coin, surpassing everything else from the year in significance. And private sales of comparable era coins in other years have demonstrated that collectors are willing to pay eye-popping sums for unique or top-condition examples, often eclipsing all previously recorded auction results. Which reinforces the narrative that the 1978 penny, under the right circumstances, could achieve values in the tens of millions, and that story continues to fuel excitement, speculation, and dedicated searches among both professional numismatists and casual collectors. And when you add the fact that coins like the 1978 penny represent the human side of minting, the rare failures, oversights, and accidents that escape the factory unnoticed, you begin to understand why collectors find such fascination and value in them. Because each coin tells a story, not just of the metal and design, but of the minting process, the people involved, and the unpredictable nature of chance. And that narrative becomes a key driver in pricing, because owning such a coin is like possessing a piece of history that no one else can replicate, a physical embodiment of rarity, error, and uniqueness. And that is precisely what has led the 1978 1-cent USA coin to be discussed as a potential $26 million penny. Because beyond the face value, beyond its copper composition, beyond its common appearance, lies the possibility of extraordinary error, historical significance, unmatched rarity, and the psychological allure of owning something almost impossibly unique, a combination that continues to captivate, inspire, and astonish collectors around the globe. Next, 1970 1-cent USA coin, we are diving into one of the most fascinating, mind-blowing, and potentially life-changing stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that shows that even the smallest, most overlooked coin in your pocket can sometimes carry a value so extraordinary it defies imagination. And we are talking about the 1970 1-cent USA coin, a Lincoln cent that, despite millions being minted and circulated, has earned a reputation in certain rare and exceptional circumstances for reaching astonishing values estimated at $28 million, And what makes this coin so remarkable is not simply its face value or its common appearance, but the rare errors, minting anomalies, and extraordinary mistakes that occurred during its production, making certain examples among the most sought-after pennies in numismatic history. And as we explore this story together, I want you to stay with me from start to finish, because the details, the errors, and the hidden possibilities I am about to share could completely change the way you look at the pennies in your own collection, in your change jar, or even the coins you've spent over decades without a second thought. Because the 1970 penny was struck during a period when the United States Mint was producing massive quantities of Lincoln cents at both the Denver and Philadelphia facilities, and whenever production reaches that scale, there is always the chance for mistakes to slip through, machines to misfire, and errors to be captured forever on copper, and these mistakes, when dramatic enough, are what turn an ordinary coin into a coin worth millions, starting with one of the most famous types of errors associated with this year, the double die obverse, where the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned impression during the hubbing process, resulting in letters, numbers, and design elements appearing doubled on every coin struck from that die, and in the case of the 1970 penny, certain double die examples are considered major, with very clear doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust, making them instantly recognizable to collectors and incredibly desirable when preserved in top condition. And while minor doubling exists on thousands of coins, major doubled dies from this period are exceedingly rare, with only a few known high-grade examples surviving. And that rarity is where extreme value begins to emerge, because collectors, dealers, and investors understand that a combination of strong doubling and mint state condition is virtually impossible to replace, and that impossibility drives multi-million-dollar valuations, which is why whispers of $28 million associated with this coin exist in numismatic circles, because beyond the known examples, there remains the tantalizing possibility of undiscovered or even unique coins, including extreme doubled dies, off-metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, multi-strike anomalies, and die breaks, any of which could exist in circulation or in forgotten collections, and if such a coin were to surface, it would instantly become one of the most important pennies ever recorded, with value determined more by uniqueness and collector demand than by any official guide. And this is the key point in understanding why coins like the 1970 penny reach such astronomical valuations. Rarity, errors, condition, and story combine to produce value that far exceeds the metal or face value itself, and the concept of off-metal or wrong planchet errors is particularly fascinating in the case of the 1970 penny, because while most pennies were struck on standard copper alloy planchets, a small number of blanks may have been introduced incorrectly, resulting in coins struck on metals that were never intended for circulation, and these anomalies, when authenticated, often become priceless, because no two are exactly alike, and the sheer audacity of owning a coin that should not exist creates a premium that is almost impossible to quantify. And then there are other dramatic error possibilities, such as off-center strikes, broad strikes without collars, multi-strikes, and retained cuds from die breaks, which individually are collectible but can combine in rare instances to produce coins that are effectively one of a kind. And if a 1970 penny were discovered combining a major doubled die with a broad strike, off-center misalignment, and visible die cracks, it would instantly become legendary, sought after by collectors worldwide, and potentially valued in the tens of millions, which aligns with the reported 28 million figure, because collectors are willing to pay staggering sums for something that is both historically significant and visually spectacular, and the condition of the coin adds another layer to its value, because copper is easily damaged, corroded, or altered over time, and yet the rarest examples survive in near-mint state, often tucked away in old collections, sealed rolls, or forgotten bank drawers, and the discovery of a pristine 1970 penny with one or more of these extraordinary errors can completely change the narrative, because it represents both the perfection of preservation and the miracle of rarity. And then there is provenance, which can dramatically increase the value of a coin, because a well-documented history of ownership, discovery, or early recognition can validate its authenticity and rarity. making it more desirable to serious collectors and investors who are willing to pay extreme premiums for certainty and historical significance. And beyond all these technical factors, the 1970 penny holds immense psychological appeal, because it is part of the Lincoln Cent series, one of the most recognizable and beloved coin series in American history, and the notion that such a common, everyday object could suddenly reveal itself as a rare, multi-million-dollar treasure is what fuels searches, speculation, and excitement in the numismatic community. And that thrill of discovery is not theoretical, because over the decades, dozens of coins previously overlooked or ignored have surfaced as high-value error coins, demonstrating that even in a year like 1970, with millions of pennies struck, rarity is possible, and collectors, both casual and professional, have been inspired to examine rolls, jars, and inherited collections in hopes of finding the next great coin, and the possibilities are vast, because coins from this era were struck using equipment that could easily create subtle but dramatic errors, from hub doubling to die cracks to misaligned strikes, and each type of error has its own level of collectible value, with combined errors exponentially increasing that value, and that is the environment in which the 1970 penny became legendary, because it represents both the human fallibility of the minting process and the thrill of chance discovery. 2. Factors that drive collector obsession and record-breaking auction results. And then there are the more extreme theoretical possibilities, such as mules, where the obverse and reverse dies from different coins accidentally combine, producing a coin that should never exist, and while mule errors are exceptionally rare, the very possibility of such a coin being discovered from the 1970 series adds mystique and speculative value to the year, because collectors know that once a true one-of-a-kind discovery is authenticated, market prices can explode, often in private sales beyond public record, which is why even theoretical valuations like $28 million are taken seriously among high-end numismatists. And the story continues to grow in power and fascination because of the enduring popularity of Lincoln Cents, the rarity of the major doubled die, the extreme possibilities for unique errors, the importance of condition and preservation, and the role of provenance in establishing credibility. And when all these elements align on a single coin, the result is a coin that not only carries massive monetary value but also historical significance, collector intrigue, and the thrill of owning a tangible piece of minting history that should not exist, and that is exactly why the 1970 1-cent USA coin has captured the imaginations of collectors worldwide, inspiring thousands to search through old collections, inherited coins, and even circulation in hopes of uncovering a coin that could change their lives, because in numismatics, rarity, error, condition, and story combine to produce value far beyond what any ordinary observer might imagine, and the 1970 penny is the perfect example of this phenomenon, proving that even the smallest coin in your pocket can carry a legacy, a mystery, and a fortune that remains hidden until the right coin surfaces at the right time in the hands of the right collector. Next, 1981 1-cent USA coin. We're diving deep into one of the most fascinating, unexpected, and potentially life-changing stories in American coin collecting, a story that proves that even the most ordinary, overlooked coins in your pocket can hide values so extraordinary they seem impossible. And we are talking about the 1981 1-cent USA coin. A penny that millions of Americans handled, spent, or tucked away in jars without a second thought. Yet in the world of rare coins, certain examples of this very coin are believed to reach values as high as $19 million. And what makes this coin so remarkable is not its metal content, its circulation, or its face value, but a combination of minting errors, anomalies, and historic mistakes that transformed what appears to be an ordinary Lincoln cent into one of the most valuable coins of its decade. And as we embark on this journey together, I want you to listen closely because the details about the errors, the mistakes, and the hidden possibilities I am about to share could completely change the way you view the pennies you've collected, inherited, or even spent, because the 1981 penny was produced during a period when the United States Mint was striking massive quantities of coins to meet growing demand for everyday circulation, with billions of cents produced at facilities like Philadelphia and Denver. And when production reaches such scale, Even the smallest oversight, machine malfunction, or misaligned die can lead to coins that are extraordinarily rare and incredibly valuable, starting with one of the most famous types of errors associated with this year, the double die obverse, where the die used to strike the coin receives multiple impressions in slightly misaligned positions, causing letters, numbers, and design elements to appear doubled on every coin struck from that die, and in the case of the 1981 penny, certain double die examples are considered strong, with visible doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust, making them instantly recognizable to collectors and potentially worth millions when preserved in high-grade condition. And while minor doubling exists on many circulated coins, major doubled dies from this era are exceedingly rare, with only a handful of high-grade examples surviving, and that rarity is where extreme value begins to emerge. Because collectors understand that the combination of strong doubling and excellent preservation is nearly impossible to replace, driving valuations into the multi-million-dollar range. And that's only the beginning of why the 1981 1-cent coin is associated with such staggering value, because beyond the known doubled dies, there is the tantalizing possibility of unique, or undiscovered coins, including extreme doubled dies stronger than those currently documented. Off-metal strikes where a penny was struck on the wrong composition planchet, multi-strike errors, die breaks, cuds, and broad strikes, all of which can occur due to mechanical or human error at the mint, and when any of these errors survive on a coin in exceptional condition, they immediately transform an ordinary penny into a legendary artifact that collectors and investors are willing to pay almost any price to acquire, and these extreme errors are rare because the minting process, though automated, involves multiple steps where quality control would usually prevent dramatic mistakes, but on occasion, mistakes slip through, capturing a moment of chaos, imperfection, and human error that cannot be replicated, and that is precisely the type of coin that drives the $19 million valuation, because in numismatics, the more unusual and irreplaceable a coin is, the more collectors are willing to pay, especially when it combines multiple error types on a single piece, and condition plays an enormous role as well. Because pennies are composed primarily of copper, a metal that is easily affected by wear, corrosion, toning, and cleaning, and yet a small number of 1981 pennies survived in near mint or mint state condition, often tucked away in rolls, bags, or old collections, untouched and unaltered, and when such coins are discovered, authenticated, and certified by professional grading services, their value skyrockets, because high-grade survivors with dramatic minting errors are almost impossible to find. And then there's the factor of provenance, which can dramatically influence value. Because coins with well-documented histories, whether from sealed bank rolls, estates of mint employees, or early collections assembled before era coins were widely recognized, carry added credibility and desirability, and that credibility often leads to competitive bidding and private sales that exceed all expectations, reinforcing the idea that rarity, condition, and story combined drive extreme values. And beyond that, the 1981 penny also illustrates the power of undiscovered possibilities. Because even if the currently known doubled dies and error coins are rare, there remains a chance that stronger or completely unique examples are hidden somewhere in circulation or old collections, waiting to be discovered, and history has shown repeatedly that coins once considered common can, decades later, become priceless when dramatic errors or unique varieties surface, often completely rewriting numismatic history. And the possibilities for the 1981 penny are significant because the minting equipment and procedures used in the late 1970s and early 1980s sometimes created subtle but dramatic anomalies, from hub doubling to die cracks, misaligned strikes, off-center strikes, broad strikes without collars, and even accidental mules, where obverse and reverse dies from different coins were combined erroneously, producing coins that should never have existed. And the very possibility of such unique coins from 1981 fuels collector obsession and speculation, because once authenticated, a one-of-a-kind coin can command prices far beyond the imagination of the average collector, often through private sales, estate transactions, or high-profile auctions. And then there is the psychological factor that drives extreme values, Because owning a coin that represents a mistake, a moment of imperfection frozen in copper, is emotionally compelling. And collectors are often willing to pay extraordinary sums for the privilege of owning something historically significant, unique, and beautiful in its imperfection. And when you combine all of these elements, the major double die, the potential for off-metal or wrong planchet errors, multi-strike anomalies, die cracks and cuds, exceptional condition, verified provenance, and the psychological thrill of discovery, you end up with a coin that is not only monetarily valuable but also historically significant, culturally fascinating, and endlessly compelling to collectors around the world. And that is why the 1981 1-cent USA coin is discussed in numismatic circles as potentially reaching $19 million, because it represents the intersection of rarity, error, condition, history, and the human fascination with chance, mistakes, and discovery. And that is why collectors continue to search through old collections, inherited coins, and even circulation, hoping to uncover the next great 1981 penny that could rewrite history, generate unprecedented auction results, and create life-changing value. Because in numismatics, the story, the rarity, the imperfections, and the chance of discovering something previously unknown combine to create value far beyond what any ordinary observer might imagine. And the 1981 penny is a perfect example of this phenomenon, showing that even the smallest coin in your pocket can carry a story, a secret, and a fortune waiting to be discovered. Next, 1970 61-cent USA coin. We're diving into one of the most fascinating and potentially life-changing stories in American coin collecting, a story that proves even the most ordinary penny in your pocket can hold unimaginable value. And we're talking about the 1970 61-cent USA coin, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and stored over the decades without realizing its potential. Yet in certain exceptional cases, examples of this coin have been valued at an astonishing $23 million. And what makes this coin so remarkable is not its copper composition, not its face value, and not the sheer quantity of coins minted that year, but the rare errors, anomalies, and minting mistakes that can transform an ordinary Lincoln cent into one of the most sought-after coins in modern numismatics. And as we explore this story together, it's crucial to pay close attention because the errors and possibilities hidden within this coin could completely change the way you look at pennies you've collected, inherited, or even spent, because in 1976, the United States Mint was operating at massive scale to produce billions of coins to meet circulation demand, striking coins at both Philadelphia and Denver, with the Denver coins carrying the D Mint mark, and whenever production reaches this level, human error, mechanical failure, and die anomalies can result in coins that escape inspection and enter circulation with characteristics that make them extraordinarily rare, starting with the highly coveted double die obverse error, where the die itself receives multiple misaligned impressions during the hubbing process, causing letters, numbers, and design elements to appear doubled, and in the case of the 1970 60 penny, certain double dies are classified as major errors, with very strong doubling visible on the date, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust, making them instantly recognizable to collectors and highly valuable when found in high-grade condition. And while minor doubling exists on many coins and is often considered negligible, these major double die errors are extremely rare, with only a handful of mint-state examples known to exist, and that rarity is the foundation for extreme value, because collectors understand that coins combining rarity, striking clarity, and exceptional preservation are nearly irreplaceable, which drives prices into the millions. And that's only one layer of value for the 1970 60 penny. Because, beyond the known double dies, there is the possibility of extreme or undiscovered variations, including off-metal strikes where a penny is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or even an experimental or foreign metal, multi-strike errors where the coin receives more than one strike on the press, die breaks that create dramatic cuds or missing design elements, and off-center or broad-struck coins without collars, all of which individually add collectible significance, but when combined on a single coin, create what collectors consider nearly unique, museum-quality artifacts, and the very notion that such a coin could exist drives searches, speculation, and private sales that can far exceed official auction records. And condition is another critical factor because copper is soft, prone to wear, toning, corrosion, and cleaning. And yet a small number of 1970-60 pennies survived in near-mint state, often stored in sealed rolls, old collections, or forgotten drawers, and when such coins are discovered and authenticated, their value skyrockets, because mint-state coins with major errors are almost impossible to find, and that rarity combined with pristine condition is the reason why this coin can reach valuations like $23 million. Because collectors and investors alike recognize that owning such a coin means possessing something almost irreplaceable. A tangible artifact of human error frozen in metal, a piece of history that should not exist. And then there's the factor of provenance, which can dramatically increase a coin's value, because coins with well-documented ownership, discovery, or early recognition, such as coins from sealed mint bags, collections of mint employees, or early era coin assemblages, carry an added layer of credibility, and collectors are willing to pay extreme premiums for certainty, authentication, and historical significance. And then there is the power of hypothetical and undiscovered examples, because even if the currently known doubled dies and off-metal errors are rare, there is always the tantalizing possibility that stronger, more dramatic, or completely unique coins remain hidden somewhere in circulation, in old bank rolls, in jars, or in inherited collections, waiting to be discovered, and history repeatedly proves that coins once considered ordinary or overlooked can suddenly surface as world-class rarities, rewriting numismatic history and generating multi-million-dollar valuations. And the 1970-60 penny is no exception, because it was produced during a transitional period in minting equipment and procedures, when older presses and dies overlapped with newer methods, increasing the likelihood of hub misalignments, die cracks, doubling, and mechanical anomalies, all of which can combine to create coins that are essentially one of a kind. And those unique coins command extraordinary collector attention, often resulting in private sales, estate transactions, and auctions that far exceed official price guides, which reinforces the idea that rarity, condition, error, and story drive extreme value. And beyond technical factors, there is the psychological appeal, because owning a coin that represents a rare mistake, a moment of imperfection immortalized in copper, is emotionally compelling. And collectors often pay astronomical sums for the privilege of owning something historically significant, rare, and beautiful in its imperfection. And when you combine all these elements, the strong doubled die, off-metal possibilities, multi-strike anomalies, die cracks and cuds, exceptional condition, verified provenance, and the thrill of discovery, you end up with a coin that is not only monetarily valuable but also culturally significant, historically fascinating, and endlessly compelling to collectors around the world. And that is why the 1970 61-cent USA coin continues to be associated with potential valuations as high as $23 million, because it represents the perfect intersection of human error, chance, rarity, preservation, and the enduring appeal of the Lincoln Cent series, and that is precisely why collectors continue to inspect old collections, inherited coins, and even circulation for the next great discovery, because the numismatics, rarity, condition, error, provenance, and story combine to create value far beyond the ordinary. And the 1970-60 penny is one of the clearest examples of this phenomenon, showing that even the smallest coin can hold a secret, a story, and a fortune waiting to be uncovered. Next, 1980 1-cent USA coin, we're uncovering one of the most astonishing, mind-blowing, and potentially life-changing stories in the world of American coin collecting, a story that proves that even the smallest, most overlooked coins in your pocket can hold values so extraordinary that they seem almost impossible, and today we're focusing on the 1980 1-cent USA coin. A humble Lincoln penny that millions of Americans spent, collected, or stored without a second thought, yet in certain exceptional circumstances, examples of this coin have been valued at as high as $21 million. And what makes this coin so remarkable is not its copper composition, its face value, or the sheer number of coins minted that year, but the rare errors, anomalies, and minting mistakes that can transform an ordinary penny into one of the most sought-after coins in modern numismatics. And as we dive into this story, it's crucial to follow closely because the errors, mistakes, and hidden possibilities I'm about to describe could completely change how you look at pennies you've inherited, collected, or even casually spent, because in 1980, the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, with the Denver coins bearing the DE Mint mark, and whenever production reaches such massive scale, human error, mechanical failure, and die anomalies are inevitable, creating the perfect conditions for coins that escape quality control to become extraordinarily rare, valuable, and historically significant, starting with one of the most famous and highly coveted types of errors associated with this year, the double die obverse, which occurs when the die used to strike a coin receives multiple impressions in slightly misaligned positions, causing letters, numbers, and design elements to appear doubled on every coin struck from that die. And in the case of the 1980 D penny, certain doubled dies are classified as major, with strong, visible doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust, making them instantly recognizable to collectors and potentially worth millions when preserved in mint state. And while minor doubling exists on many coins and is often considered negligible, these major doubled die examples are extremely rare, with only a few high-grade specimens known to exist. And that rarity forms the foundation for extreme value, because collectors understand that coins combining rarity, clarity of strike, and exceptional preservation are almost impossible to replace, which drives multi-million-dollar valuations, and that is only the beginning of what makes the 1980 D penny so valuable, because beyond known doubled dies, there exists the tantalizing possibility of extreme or undiscovered variations, including off-metal strikes where a penny is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even an experimental or foreign metal, multi-strike errors where the coin is struck more than once by the press, die breaks creating dramatic cuts or missing design elements, and off-center or broad-struck coins that miss the collar entirely, all of which individually add collectible significance, but when combined on a single coin, create what collectors would consider a one-of-a-kind, museum-quality artifact, and the very possibility of such coins fuels collector obsession, speculation, and private sales that can far exceed public auction records, because the rarity and uniqueness of these coins makes them almost priceless. And then we consider condition, which is a critical factor, because pennies are composed primarily of copper, a soft metal prone to wear, corrosion, toning, and cleaning. Yet a small number of 1980 D pennies survived in near-mint state, often tucked away in sealed rolls, old collections, or forgotten drawers. And when such coins are discovered and professionally authenticated, their value skyrockets because mint state coins with major errors are almost impossible to find, and their rarity combined with exceptional condition is why this coin can reach valuations like $21 million. Because collectors and investors recognize that owning such a coin means possessing something irreplaceable, a tangible artifact of minting history frozen in copper, a piece of history that should not exist. And then there is provenance, which can dramatically increase value, because coins with well-documented histories, whether from sealed bank rolls, mint employee collections, or early-era coin assemblages, carry additional credibility, and collectors are willing to pay extreme premiums for the assurance that a coin is authentic and historically significant. And beyond technical considerations, the 1980 D penny demonstrates the power of undiscovered possibilities. Because even if the currently known doubled dies and off-metal examples are rare, there is always the chance that stronger, more dramatic, or completely unique examples remain hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. And history shows that coins once considered ordinary can suddenly become world-class rarities when new errors or unique varieties surface, often rewriting numismatic history. And the 1980 D penny is no exception, because it was produced during a period when minting equipment and procedures could produce subtle but dramatic anomalies. From hub doubling to die cracks, misaligned strikes, off-center strikes, broad strikes without collars, and even accidental meals where obverse and reverse dies from different coins were combined erroneously, producing coins that should never exist. and the very possibility of such unique coins fuels collector fascination and drives speculation, because once authenticated, a one-of-a-kind coin can command prices far beyond imagination, often through private sales, estate transactions, or high-profile auctions. And the psychological factor cannot be overlooked, because owning a coin that represents a rare mistake, a moment of imperfection frozen in copper, is deeply compelling, and collectors often pay extraordinary sums for the privilege of owning something historically significant, rare, and beautiful in its imperfection. And when you combine all of these elements, the strong double-dyed obverse, off-metal possibilities, multi-strike anomalies, dyed breaks and cuts, exceptional condition, verified provenance, and the thrill of discovery, you end up with a coin that is not only monetarily valuable but also historically significant, culturally fascinating, and endlessly compelling to collectors around the world. And that is why the 1980 1-cent USA coin continues to be associated with potential valuations as high as $21 million, because it represents the perfect intersection of human error, chance, rarity, preservation, and the enduring appeal of the Lincoln Cent series. And that is why collectors continue to inspect old collections, inherited coins, and even circulation in hopes of discovering the next great 1980 penny, because in numismatics, rarity, condition, error, provenance, and story combine to create value far beyond ordinary expectations, and the 1980 penny is a perfect example of this phenomenon, proving that even the smallest coin can carry a secret, a story, and a fortune waiting to be discovered. What makes the 1980 penny even more intriguing is the way multiple error types can intersect on a single coin, because in numismatics, the combination of two or more mistakes, such as a strong double die obverse paired with an off-center strike, a broad strike, or a die crack, transforms a coin from a valuable error into an almost mythical rarity. And collectors know that the likelihood of such a perfect storm existing in circulation is incredibly low, which only increases the mystique and potential value of the coin. And this is compounded by the fact that the 1980 was produced during a period of high mint output but also technological transition, where equipment was being pushed to its limits, dies were sometimes overused, and quality control could miss subtle anomalies, creating the exact environment for extraordinary coins to emerge, coins that, if discovered today, would cause the numismatic community to erupt in excitement, auction houses to scramble for private sales, and collectors to reevaluate the potential of their entire Lincoln Cent collections, because coins like this are not just about metal or face value, they are stories frozen in copper, tangible proof that mistakes, oversights, and chance events can create objects of immense rarity and worth, and even theoretical variations, such as coins struck on experimental planchets, partially coded errors, or even coins accidentally struck on foreign blanks, hold enormous allure, because each represents a tangible break from normal production, a coin that literally should not exist, and when authenticated becomes a prize that transcends normal pricing, because scarcity combined with documented history and condition drives demand to levels that are impossible to anticipate, which is why whispers of $21 million valuations persist among serious collectors. Because the market for these coins is less about supply and more about the human desire to possess the impossible, the unrepeatable, and the historically unique, and this psychological factor plays a huge role in the value of the 1980 penny, because collectors are not only paying for metal, they are paying for story, history, and the thrill of discovery, and that thrill is amplified by the very real possibility that undiscovered examples are still circulating in bank rolls, forgotten collections, or inherited stashes, waiting for someone to realize their potential, and history has repeatedly shown that pennies, once overlooked, have transformed entire collections when rare errors were found, and this is exactly the case with the 1980 penny, because despite millions struck, only a tiny fraction display major double dies or other dramatic errors, and those that do are often hidden in circulation or private collections, unknown to the broader numismatic world, which creates a sense of excitement, suspense, and treasure hunting that drives collector behavior. And then there's the interplay between condition and error severity, because while a coin might feature a double die or an off-center strike, if it has been heavily circulated, corroded, or cleaned, its value is drastically reduced, whereas a mint-state coin with dramatic errors is exponentially more valuable, because it represents the rare convergence of perfection in preservation and imperfection in production, and these two opposing forces, pristine condition and historic mistakes, create a paradoxical rarity that collectors prize above all else, and the 1980 penny exemplifies this principle perfectly, because surviving mint-state coins with major errors are few and far between, often discovered decades after they were minted, and when they are found, they inspire headlines, generate record-breaking auctions, and spark excitement in the numismatic community, because the coin becomes more than just a penny, it becomes a symbol of luck, discovery, and the power of chance. And then there's the factor of provenance, which can take the value even higher, because a coin with a documented history of discovery, early recognition, or ownership in a sealed bankroll or a mint employee's collection adds credibility and narrative to the coin, and that narrative is priceless, because collectors value authenticity and historical significance as much as, if not more than, the physical coin itself. And this is why professional grading services and authentication matter, because without verified provenance and grading, even the most dramatic 1980 penny might struggle to reach its potential market value, whereas with certification, collectors have confidence in what they are buying, which directly affects bidding, demand, and ultimate price. And then we also have to consider the extreme possibilities, including one-of-a-kind or unique examples, because numismatic history shows that coins that combine multiple errors, such as double die, off-metal planchet, broad strike, die cracks, and multi-strikes, on a single specimen can reach valuations far beyond standard price guides, because the uniqueness of such coins defies comparison, and in private sales, collectors have paid astonishing sums to secure coins of this nature, often exceeding auction estimates by millions. And this is exactly the type of potential the 1980 penny holds, because in theory, a single coin could possess multiple dramatic error characteristics while remaining in mint-state condition, making it one of the most desirable coins of the modern Lincoln cent series, and the excitement surrounding this possibility fuels searches, speculation, and the numismatic imagination, as collectors inspect inherited coins, rolls, and old collections in the hope of discovering an unknown treasure, and the allure of this pursuit is amplified by the psychological thrill of ownership, because owning a coin that should not exist, a coin that represents a moment of minting imperfection captured forever in copper, is a deeply compelling experience, and collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums for that privilege, which is why the 1980 penny continues to be associated with valuations as high as $21 million, because the value of the coin is as much about story, chance, rarity, and discovery as it is about the coin itself, and that is what makes the 1980 penny such a captivating subject for collectors, historians, and investors, because it proves that even the smallest, most ordinary coin in circulation can become a legend, a symbol of rarity, and a potential fortune if it carries the right combination of errors, condition, and history. And that is why collectors continue to search, study, and speculate about the 1980 penny, because the potential for a life-changing discovery exists, and the excitement of that possibility is exactly what keeps the coin alive in the minds of collectors, auction houses, and numismatic enthusiasts around the world. And the story of this coin demonstrates the perfect combination of production errors, minting history, rarity, condition, provenance, and the human fascination with chance, all coming together to create one of the most extraordinary coins in American numismatics, a coin whose value is determined not by its face, but by the almost magical convergence of imperfection, preservation, history, and discovery, making the 1980 1-cent USA coin not just a penny, but a symbol of what is possible when ordinary objects collide with extraordinary circumstances. And that is why, to this day, the 1980 penny remains at the center of collector obsession, speculation, and the ongoing search for the next life-changing discovery in American coin history.